Young from OIE.
Yeah. Oh, Jim. Oh, I know. I remember you. You run the entrepreneurship program, right? Yeah, I remember talking to you about there was a time I forgot the name of the event. Pitch George, is that still around?
Yes, it is. It's run by the business
Yeah,
community.
I remember talking to you about that. This was like more more like 13 years ago, but yes, I did. Good to see you.
Doing well. All right. Hello, everyone. We're gonna get started. Our afternoon sessions will be kicked off by plenary six, future trends and global best practices. And so we'll start with simple rules and heuristic decision making using the quick screen tool, a case study of JD Bioscience. So I know we have a group of presenters, and we'll get started. Let me pull up their slides. Yep. Introduce yourselves and this is good. All right.
That's fine, we can use the arrows. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Rayanne. I'm a postdoc fellow from Rutgers University, and I'm joined by my teammates, June and Ryan, who are also first year postdoc fellows at Rutgers University. So today we're going to go ahead and get started. If you guys want to follow along with the PDF version of our presentation, feel free to use this QR code, and it should take you directly to that. And then we'll also have it towards the end as well. All right, and then we do want to thank our research preceptor, Dr. York, from flying out from California and moving his schedule around to attend our presentation today. And so we'll go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to be looking at a South Korean biotech firm case study. We're going to be using the quick screen tool as our lens for this case study. We'll go ahead and get started with looking at the South Korean market, which we talked a lot about it yesterday. It's really dynamic. There's a lot of excited players, both in the government as well as in private investor circles. And then the challenge that we have with all these amazing resources and opportunities is using them in the right way. Okay. And then we're going to be using two different concepts, both simple rules and heuristic decision making with the quick screen tool to really look at our JD Bioscience case study. So Cruz and some of the researchers with him looked at heuristics, and they found that heuristics helps with clear thinking and decision making. And then Sol and Eisenhart, who we'll talk about in a little bit, have a book called Simple Rules, pretty clear and to the point. And they introduced a really cool strategy that helps save time and effort by simplifying a lot of information. And again, we're going to be using these two concepts to look at our case study using the quick screen tool, which is a management decision-making tool that has a valuable set of rules to analyze different opportunities with. We'll go over previous research and cases, and then we'll introduce the 3Ps concept, which are project, product, and platform. All right, so our overarching question again is how can we use the quick screen tool and its resulting scorecard to efficiently and thoroughly assess an opportunity like JD Bioscience? So this is the flow of our presentation today. So getting to the South Korean market, defining what the two concepts of simple rules and heuristic decision making are, and then finally assessing our South Korean biotech case study. So for the South Korean market, in the life science industry specifically, there's a thriving ecosystem. Again, a lot of really excited players, both in private as well as government. Compared to other sectors in South Korea, there is a high export growth rate of around 14% over the past 5 years, which is super impressive considering COVID. And then again, the challenge is because the South Korean pharmaceutical market is relatively small compared to the global market. It's about 1.5%. It requires strategic business models and decision making to make the best decisions possible. So for the quick screen tool, it again was created to help users walk through a series of really simple questions to help them reach a rational conclusion. We have five anchors of good opportunity, which surround our more simpler three questions of can you win, is there opportunity, and is it worth it? If you answer yes to all three, you are on the right track. And then for the three Ps that fit into the quick screen tool, again, being project, product, and platform, they help categorize all the different opportunities available based on their different maturity levels and corresponding values. So you can see that there's different inflection points on figure 2, project being primarily preclinical, product is a little bit more well thought out and developed with clinical development, and then finally platform ready to go to market. And so our big two concepts for today that will help us use the quick screen tool, again, are simple rules and heuristic decision making. We have Donald Stoll from MIT and Eisenhart from Harvard, who created or wrote this book about simple rules, which helps really, helps the reader who are typically business development professionals, investors, entrepreneurs, to take all their time and effort and use it wisely. So they created a strategy to help create simple rules that are tailored to your individual opportunities. An example of this would be having different individuals from different cross-functional areas coming together to help develop rules that can help streamline decision-making processes in a project, so you're not, having to regroup every single time a decision needs to be made. And then that feeds into heuristic decision-making, which again works really well when you do have a lot of data, when you do have a lot of information, but you don't have a lot of time. And so it leverages large amounts of information and helps you make really good decisions. And so now we'll go over MASH, which is our disease state of the day. It will come back when we talk about JD Bioscience and what they're getting up to. So first, there was a recent name change that really helped coordinate more effective research efforts, really to help get everybody globally on board and to avoid any possible confusion. So you can see that NASH, which was previously called non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, is now called metabolic dysfunction associated. And the same goes for the NAFLD. Again, non-alcoholic used to confuse patients. So this is more helpful for patients, clinicians, and researchers to be talking about the same thing. And then this picture helps show what a normal liver looks like. MASH is characterized by different stages of fibrosis. Once you get past the lipogenesis, you get to MASH, which is from stages 1 to 3. And then cirrhosis is right after. And unfortunately, sometimes that could lead to liver cancer or or carcinoma of the liver. And then why MASH as a disease state when there's so many other very prevalent disease states? It's because there's a huge, significant unmet need globally. It affects a large proportion of the population, and with its increasing prevalence, about one out of 1 billion people worldwide, 10 to 20% of them will be diagnosed with MASH. So there's a potential market size for different MASH treatments, which we have very little that are very little or just one, which I'll talk about in just a little bit, that are specifically approved for MASH treatment. And then this map just shows all the different prevalence stats. So this is a very busy slide. We won't go over all of these different types of mechanisms, but as you can see, even though it's a difficult disease state to treat, there have been lots of attempts, and there's different opportunities to have an FDA approved or an approved medication that treats this disease state, which we'll be going over in just a little bit. And then the FDA did recently approve a new drug. Mardi Gras Pharmaceutics had their drug Rezdiffra approved, which is really exciting because now that there's an FDA-approved medication for MASH, there is a regulatory pathway that other pharmaceutical companies can follow, which helps decrease the risk, allowing for more competition and more people to get involved. We also bring this up because Mardi Gras Pharmaceuticals has a really similar background to the Korean biotech firm that we're going to be speaking about today. They both have a founder who was a scientist, a drug developer, and really an academic at heart. And so with that, I will pass the mic over to June.
All right, thanks so much, Rayanne. So now that Rayanne has provided some context behind the quick screen tool as well as the South Korean market, or K-Bio, if you want to speak. So I'll be going into a case study, and in this case, thanks. In this case, we did the case study against JD Bioscience. And as an overview of the company, it was a spin out from Gwangju Institute of Science and Technology, and it's currently based in 3 locations. So the first one is, I'd go over the BD strategy office is based in Seoul, South Korea. The R&D site and general affairs is based in Gwangju. And in Melbourne, Australia is where they're operating their clinical affairs. So, and an important note to mention, they conducted their phase one trial over there in Melbourne. Now, going over the founding team. So as you can see on the right side, they're all the founders, and it was founded back in 2017 by a team of scientists. So it's a fairly young company, and the founders bring an eclectic background in the science domain. So as you can see, we have expertise in the medicinal chemistry aspect, target discovery, as well as PK/PD validation. And currently, the team has grown to about 30 members, and among the 30 members, more than 20 of them are researchers. And now, going over their strategy very briefly, their strategy is essentially to go after new targets and, broadly speaking, metabolic conditions. And currently, the focus is very broad. As you can see, there are multiple domains listed here, but it could be distilled down into 4 main categories. And so liver disease, cancer, inflammatory disease, and rare disease. And these are all broad buckets, but these can be grouped into 4. And currently, their lead asset has completed phase 1 and is about to enter phase 2. It's indicated for MASH, and MASH is a rapidly growing market, rapidly growing indication. There's a huge unmet medical need, and it's projected to reach around $100 billion by 2030. And again, I touched upon the founding team background, but this is an overview of the management team as well as the SAB. And so collectively, they bring a wealth of experience and complements the founding team members' backgrounds. One thing to note here is looking forward for the future, they might need to diversify diversify their team in terms of skill set, but as well as location. Because for skill set, even though they have a tremendous scientific expertise and background, they might need to consider bringing in industry experts, especially in the development, regulatory, and commercial capabilities. And in terms of geographical considerations, as they project or hope to expand outside of Korea, it might be wise to onboard some foreigners to help with that process. And now this is their pipeline. As you can see, besides the one that's highlighted in the red box, there are multiple other assets in their portfolio. And it's very broad, as mentioned before, but we thought it's not the best strategy for startups, as startups are usually they have limited resources and they need to deploy their capital wise and efficiently. And having multiple programs might not be ideal. In this case, they do have their lead asset in phase one, and they're putting in a lot of resources into maturing that program. But as the company matures and progresses further in their business life cycle, it might be wise to consider maybe consolidating some programs or prioritizing one over the other. And just to briefly touch upon their lead asset that's indicated for MASH, I just want to highlight two key point of differentiation points before moving forward. So the first one is unique biomarker strategy. So they identified serotonin as a precursor to MASH, and based off of that strategy, they developed their asset with a mechanistic hypothesis of a triple mechanism of action of targeting the pathology of MASH by antagonizing the serotonin 5-HT2A subtype receptor. And it can essentially kill three birds with one stone. And the first process is reducing lipogenesis and also mitigating inflammatory cytokines and also reducing fibrogenesis, so preventing scarring of the liver tissue. So it's very unique, and that's their lead asset. And now that we have a sort of a background of JD Bioscience, we'll go into talking about how we used a quick screen to effectively assess this company. First off, with methods. So we took a mixed methods approach. And so that means that we didn't use a standardized case study method. But just to highlight a couple things, when we did our public search or secondary research, we used resources such as PubMed, PitchBook, as well as some publicly available data on their website. And that provided us with a trove of data that are publicly available and helped us do an initial assessment of the company. And then we identified gaps to assess the company. So we reached out to a company representative. In this case, it was the innovative director at JD Bioscience, Peter Gugner. We had the privilege of spending an hour with him, just interviewing a lot of curated questions. And so we got some both public as well as non-public information by conducting public secondary research as well as an interview under CDA. And then we used a quick screen tool. And Rayanne mentioned this before, so I'm just going to briefly touch upon this before moving on to the results. But there were three main grading criteria that we used. The first is opportunity, monetary, and then there's a competitive advantage piece. And it'll all make sense once we dive into the actual scorecard. So this is just one section, but I'll just walk you through this. So there's the main section, opportunity, and then there are multiple subsections, and you can put in different weighting for each of the categories. But in this case, we just weighted everything equally. But in real life, you can tailor it to your priorities and your needs. And we scored the opportunity based on a scale of 1 to 4, and it'll culminate in a weighted score. And once we screen JD Bioscience for opportunity, obviously, as mentioned before, MASH is a rapidly growing market, and it's projected to reach $100 billion in 2030. So the market is has high potential. And in terms of indication and competition, We got the first approval recently from Madrigal Pharmaceuticals, and that opened up the regulatory path for these types of drugs. And so we anticipate a much fiercer competitive landscape moving forward. So that's why we scored it a little lower compared to the rest. And in terms of maturity and timing, it's pretty straightforward. They're startups, so a lot more validation to be made. And on the 3P continuum, the score of 3 lands on platform. And then applying it on the monetary scorecard, they've currently, they are well capitalized to achieve their near-term goals, but as a startup, it doesn't hurt to have more money. And they also have a broad portfolio, so it might aid in that. Currently, they're raising their Series C, aiming for more than $20 million. And the current investor base is primarily institutions and individuals in South Korea. But this is also a good caveat that they might need to consider that going forward, they might need to diversify their investor base, particularly in the US market, because it is the largest market. And on the 3P continuum, it falls under a platform with a score of 2.8. And lastly, competitive advantage. So their product is well differentiated with their unique biomarker strategy as well as their triple mechanism of action. Their differentiation point is noted. However, as mentioned before, the competition is getting fiercer, and we're waiting on their phase 2 clinical data. And there's a saying in the biotech industry that proof is in the clinic. So more clinical data, more de-risking, and so more investors feel comfortable in deploying capital into a company. And lastly, enduring. So as we prepare for the future, again, consider diversifying the team in terms of industry experts as well as geographic diversity. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that with a score of 3.6, it fell under on platform in the continuum. Okay, so that all culminated in a total score of 3.13 out of 4.0, and that is a very high score for a startup. And some of the highlights or their strength came down to be their competitive advantage, not surprising with their biomarker strategy and their unique mechanism of action of their drug. And then in terms of the weakness, not surprising that it was monetary, because as a startup, you're always not that well equipped with a lot of resources. Okay, and so what does that mean? Like, what does a total score of 3.13 out of 4 mean? And that was distilled down to being a platform opportunity on the 3P continuum. And this is remarkable and also outstanding because we initially selected JD Bioscience to be a case study for a product opportunity, which falls in the middle. And this scale sort of represents the maturity. So the farther right you go, the more mature the program. And that just speaks volumes to the maturity and also the potential of the asset as well as the company itself. And with that being said, I'll hand it over to Ryan to close it off. Thank you.
All right. This one on? Oh, there it is. All right. Thank you, June. So now I'm going to finish off our presentation by covering the discussion piece. So really what I'm going to be talking about is we've already discussed, how great JD Biosciences is and its success so far. But why does the quick screen tool actually matter? Why would somebody use it and why was it created? So the quick screen tool can be a powerful resource for investors, but also business development professionals and entrepreneurs. South Korea currently lacks this type of framework that entrepreneurs and investors can use, but they are far from alone in that situation. All geographies actually lack such a tool, and there's currently no popularized tools that exist to aid professionals in a more efficient assessment of external opportunities. And few tools even exist for business professionals or business development professionals to use at all. So we're trying to fill that gap here with the quick screening tool. So the quick screening tool, as you've seen, succinctly captured JD Bioscience's success story. And where it really helps out is as a business development professional, you can see JD Biosciences or as an investor, and you can reach your decision point quicker than you would without using such a tool. So through our research, the quick screen tool guided our research and improved our efficiency. We were able to complete an assessment of JD Biosciences quicker than we would have without such a tool guiding us. So we believe this tool could also improve efficiency for real business development professionals, investors, and entrepreneurs as well. All of the quantitative and qualitative pearls of JD Biosciences, and June talked about all of these earlier, all the factors that go into what creates a successful company, we attempt to capture within this tool and distill all of that information down into numerical values that really just grade how good an opportunity actually is. So what does this tool mean for BD professionals? It's a quick, comprehensive initial screening that enables discussions and future assessments. So this tool can really help in improving an initial assessment and setting up how you're going to progress and move forward. So what are the limitations of our research and the quick screen tool? So we use non-standard case study methods. We had no predefined methodology that we utilized here. We also did not use any detailed output coding. We conducted an interview with an individual from JD Biosciences, and we used an AI transcript to write down everything that was said in that interview, but we did not use that transcript for any output coding. Third would be limited generalizability due to it being a single case study, just with the sample size being small. And the final limitation would be that there's not equivalent information available for every startup. Some interviewers will provide more information than others, and also there's just different amounts of information in the public domain for all companies. So what does this research contribute? It added to the existing literature on heuristic decision-making, provided a practical application of the tool, and also an opportunity to improve the tool and field feedback around it. So what are the applications of the quick screen tool? It can help business development professionals improve their efficiency. So somebody in pharma could use this tool and more quickly focus down what biotech companies they want to focus on, therefore improving their efficiency. It could also facilitate a detailed analysis of an opportunity by guiding the user through the essential details should be considered, therefore making sure you're not missing any important factors. And in this way, it can be very useful for investors. Third, it provides a benchmark that allows the user to quickly compare characteristics. This would really help somebody compare their company to other companies. And finally, it allows biotech firms to conduct a facilitated self-assessment and identify weaknesses. It's going to be the type of tool that could go alongside a SWOT analysis and that kind of thing for an entrepreneur to look at their own company's strengths and weaknesses and figure out how to improve. So what are the next steps for our research? Next would be to apply the QuickStream tool to a larger set of case studies across the whole 3Ps continuum. Second would be to assess opportunities for improvement. And this would definitely include feedback from legitimate business development professionals and entrepreneurs. And third would be to utilize this QuickScreen tool in an actual business development setting. And that will pretty much wrap up our presentation. In conclusion, we just have a quote from Leonardo da Vinci: "Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication." We think that's a good theme of how this tool really uses simplicity to look at and analyze very complex situations, healthcare and biotech and pharmaceuticals. There's a lot of information, so we believe using simple methods to analyze that can improve efficiency and help you come to conclusions more clearly and faster than before. So we have now completed our presentation. Thank you for listening. If anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to take them.
So first of all, thank you very much for coming here, and I think did an exceptional job with your presentation. Complicated, but the way you presented it was very well done, and it shows that you worked hard on it. So we really appreciate you for doing it here, and I think that's a great tool for it. My question to you is, looking at the scores that you have seen, and what we call it the common sense review as well. You know, there's two parts: the scientific approach, and then there's a kind of common sense approach here. And how would you address the high scores from kind of like just quick, what we call the eye test, or the kind of like, it will fit or not fit? What did you think? Was it kind of what you expected? Was it something that was unexpected that the scores were so high, type of thing?
Uh,
I
okay.
hear you.
Yeah. I think that's a great question. And that is something I didn't touch upon when I was going through the scores, but there's a high degree of subjectivity when it comes to scoring an opportunity. And it could be, let's say, if you're not familiar with the specific disease state and you're reviewing or evaluating an opportunity as an outsider of that scientific domain, then you might not know what you're grading, or you might be grading it based on the limited knowledge that you have. And that creates some sort of bias, and it could go either way, to be honest. It could be you don't like the opportunity, or there might be a certain degree of bias towards scoring it favorably. And I think in this case, we think that we did a pretty objective uh, grading for JD Bioscience. And even though it did have some elements where you could question everything, but it's still a subjective tool when it comes to grading. So,
Yep. So the reason I mentioned this is the COVID-19 vaccines. When they came out with the COVID-19, they said it's 90% efficacy rate or 95%. But 2 years later, the actual numbers are 53%. So it's the
Right.
public gets to believe what they believe here.
mhm.
So I would consider you guys, when you're doing the presentation, is to add that point there just to make sure that you're saying, hey, we know. You know, what we're grading and what can be is two different things. But again, exceptional job, really polished. So well done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So our next presenter is Dr. Thomas Hupel, presenting on German SMEs, hidden champions, lessons from South Korea successes.
There's something, but I make it. Okay. I think it's loud enough if I speak like that, and maybe the audience. Should I use that for the audience at home? That one or? Okay. Thank you so much. Yes, it was a great pleasure to speak at the Congress yesterday. And at that time, I have chosen a presentation that is more on the macro level, because I have talked about the comparison of the US and Korea, and what we in Europe can learn to have more entrepreneurial activity. So that was yesterday. It was about the framework. Today, I just want to talk a little bit more easy about what can we do if you have a business plan, which tools can we use to make a stress test. So that is what I want to discuss today, give you an information. And just when we have been in Paris last week, that reminds me, so that is on left-hand side, that I was not there, but I have prepared my presentation that I used today for Hartmut Meyer at that time. So I'm still in collaboration with the ICSB for years, but I did not know that for real. So it is a contribution that goes back to the ICSB conference in Paris, because we are responsible, even in Germany this year, we will have a lot of students, and for me, it's a great pleasure to have them there, and they will work on a business plan for 1 week. And at the end of the week, they have a competition, and there are a lot of professors over there, and they have to make this decision about what is the best, the second business plan. And when I lead a group of young students, that is a pleasure to me. Maybe that's the reason why I have become a professor, because to work with young students, because it's the only chance they will solve our future. They will solve the problems of the futures. That is the young generation. And when I have the young generation in my classrooms and I have the business planning, then at one stage, when they all have the pink color in their eyes, they all say that is a great business plan. Then we need maybe a management tool to test this concept. And when I look at our economy today, I bought this photo from photo stock from official place. It cost me some dollars, but I like this photo because it says what we have today. Today we have the old economy, that are the gray boats in front, and we have the red boat, what is behind, and that is the disruption that we have in the markets today. Because in former times, we have big cycles. I have written an article, everything is with cycles. We have the cycle of the Kontradjevs, that means the longer cycles, and in between we have technology cycles and we have product cycles, but everything comes to an end. That's no problem, because normally we can gain money and we have the product cycle or the technology cycle, and then we have the possibility to gain money, to gain money, to gain money. And at the end, when we see, oh, the product cycle comes to an end, then, sorry for that, I want to use that later, then we can use our money to invest in the new technology. And that is, so far, that is very stable. But nowadays, we have this disruption. We can see that with Uber and a lot of companies existing and still existing concept was maybe in danger, because we have the digitalization, we have the internet, we have new technologies, and even AI. So maybe I, as a professor, is it stable that I can the next 15 years, maybe 18 years or 20, as a professor, or is AI maybe better than me? Because if you want to know something about anything, you can have a lecture and I send my avatar and I'm not there on myself. So what about the future? So we can see some examples that we have a change of business concepts due to the fact that we have digitalization. So in former times, we have normal records, and now we have Spotify and other things we can use if we want to hear some music. And the old CDs are gone. We have Kodak, we have normal pictures, we have the photo industry, and nobody has a camera with him. So the most of you, we are just using our iPhone or Samsung or something else that we use to make pictures, even for Instagram. So we have tremendous more pictures than 20 years ago, but they were not made by cameras. And another point is that in former times we have used SMS, but now we are using WhatsApp. So it's also new technology lead to a disruption, and the old economy was maybe driven or forced to leave the place, and we have new economies over there. And the same happens to the banks. We have the normal German banks on the left side, and we have PayPal, Bitcoin. We have new ideas of digitalization right now. So I bring these ideas first to the students, and then they want to deliver their idea of a new business concept. And when we have maybe in Berlin and at that week, the academy for the students, on the first day, we have the matching. They become teams, they know each other, they started their thinking of a business plan. On the second day, we will give them, a colleague of mine, a workshop in design thinking methods. And after maybe day 3, they have a first idea, what is our business model? And then I want to come over with 2 or 3 management concepts. And these management concepts, they allow me to say, to stress this business model. Is it a good or is it not a good business model? So one thing I like around the year 2000, that was done by 2 professors from INSEAD, Professor Chan Kim and Professor René Morburn, and they have written the book, The Blue Ocean Strategy. And the idea at that time was that they say we have red oceans. That is what we have the old economy. That is where we have competition, where we have all the old enterprises. And that is the existing old industry. And beneath these red oceans, we have the blue oceans. That is, yeah, it's fruitful to gain a blue ocean. That will very good, because if you gain some customers that you won't have before, that is very powerful, because then there is no competition. And maybe for 10 years or 15 years, it is possible to earn more money than the others. So blue ocean strategy is a very good idea for new business concepts. And what is inside the book? Inside the book of these both professors from INSEAD is that they have a matrix. And this matrix forces you to give you some points. The same like we have seen with the students just before. They have also used a special tool to account for their ideas or for markets or something like that. And the same is in the book, and they have a diagram, and they have to show if their new business concept is able to reduce all the pain points of the old idea. And on the other side, they have also the diagram that we have a lot of new, very positive aspects that the old concept doesn't have. So in this book, I was very happy with the diagrams, and I did, together with students, I did a book. It is written in the Springer edition. In Germany, it's a very famous book series. And we have 16 examples for the blue ocean strategy in Germany for new business cases. So that was around the year 2000. And I'm very happy, and it is also helpful for summer academies or something like that, to use the blue ocean strategy and the diagrams there. You can do that in 1 hour. I can do that with the students in 1 hour to test if their new idea, their business strategy, is it stable. And then you can do it with this diagram. So that was the way I work with the students around the year 2000, maybe up to 2010. Now we have this business model canvas. In my opinion, it is more detailed, and even for the students, because they are young, they have no experience, it leads them directly to the main aspects. What are the key partners? What are the key activities? What is the value proposition of your idea? What about customer relationship? Are there strong customer relationships? And what about the customer? What about revenue and the channels you have to use that the customer become the product? So we have these 9 fields, and I force my students right now, maybe to the year up now, I force them to make a big plus or even a minus if the new concept enable them to gain a new market. So that is a second tool I use in my work with the classrooms if they have new business ideas, to know, is it a good or is it not a good idea that we want to bring to market? That is the second concept. And the last one I want to introduce you, that is a typical German one, because we have Hermann Simon. That is the person, right? He works for the London Business School, and he was a famous professor even in Germany. But now he works as a consultant for maybe 30 years. And he has written a lot of books about the term hidden champion. Hidden champion, it is a name you maybe don't have heard that, but it is a typical German word, because we think about a pyramid. And in the pyramid, we have the very well-known companies at the top of the pyramid. And in Germany, the pyramid is rather closed, because we have right below these top enterprises, everyone knows, we have the hidden champions. And the hidden champions, if I leave my village and I drive 100 kilometers far away from my village, nobody knows big companies, maybe with 2,000 employees, and they are world-marked leaders, but they are not known 100 kilometers away because they are not the brand, the BMW, the Audi, you know, but these are companies, they deliver the key system for the car. They deliver maybe parts for the engine. And in Germany, these hidden champions in the middle of the pyramid, they have a lot of firms below that are firms with 100, 200 employees, and they deliver the parts to the hidden champions. So the pyramid in Germany with 3 million enterprises out of 80 million people, the pyramid is absolutely close. So the hidden champions for us in Germany are very famous companies. And Hermann Simon, he identified around 1,500 of these hidden champions. And when we look, and that is in his books, when you look at the success factors, why are they becoming so successful, then we have just some examples. You never heard about Tetra, you never heard about 3B Scientific, maybe about Flexi, you have never heard it. But when you see Tetra is the world market leader for aquaristic supplies, it is the strongest one in the world, but you have never heard it. Or we have 3B Scientific, anywhere where we have some lessons about medicine, all the anatomical teaching aids, they are from this company's 3B Scientific. So we have a lot of these companies, and when I read 3 books of Hermann Simon at that time, I have formulated this picture. Because this picture inspires me a lot, and it is also possible to give this picture to the students and say, okay, there are 8 ideas, 8 points your new business model has to fulfill. And if you are not able to tick for maybe 5, 6 of these aspects, your business model is maybe not good enough. And I just want to talk about the 3 circles. Let's start in the beginning, in the middle. A very good business concept that leads to a hidden champion is the role and the impact of the founder. So I have a lot of projects, maybe more than 20, with hidden champions. And all the time I have been in these companies, the talk with the CEO was very famous because it was a very engaged person. He thinks of very new ideas, new technologies. He wants to bring his company in the next and even in the 3rd generation. So they are very inspired in doing these things, and they are really leaders. The next one, it is a little bit like we have with Porter's idea. We have the resource, and then in the 3rd row, we have the market-based view. In the 3rd row, that was the leader, that is the resource-based view, the look we can do inside. First of all, it is necessary that we have a very USP point, unique selling proposition with own sources. And we have continuous innovation. That means not one product that is useful for maybe 2 or 3 years. So you have to spend a lot of money for further innovation. And if you look to these companies, they take a lot of their turnover to gain new success. So not old stars or cash cows, they even use the money to gain new stars and new question marks. So that is also a very important point, that we have a very high rate of continuous improvement. And we have motivated staff. And that is even in Germany a very crucial point, because we have a demographic change and we have the war for talents. And it is quite normal today when I talk to the students, I say the leader of the company in former times, he has a golden watch in his desk. And there comes the time when a good employee works for the company for 25 or for 40 years. But nowadays, with all the things like Xing and all the IT tools, in Germany, the average to work for one company is just below 4 years. And that means we have a high drift of the generation and of employees. And so the very good companies, the hidden champions, they have very motivated staff. They are staying in the same company for maybe 20 years. Maybe they also say to their son or their daughter, come and work for our company, so that we have a strong relationship between the company and the family. So if we leave this resource-based view at the end, we can go to the market-based view. And on the market side, we have the global orientation, even in small companies. I work with a company that is around 50 to 60 employees. And this company beats very great companies like ABB or Bosch, because they deliver parts for the airport in Dubai. They deliver parts for the light screening in tunnels, in the St. Gotthard tunnel in Switzerland. So from our region, a very small village, they are very famous all over the world with projects just with 60 employees. So the global orientation is just the thing we can have by smaller companies, and there are a lot of very good examples in Germany. We need to have a narrow market focus. I say to the students, your company must know what your customer need tomorrow. So you have always look forward orientation in your products, in your delivery, in your products. That is very important. A very successful, a very close customer relationship, and a competitive advantage against the competitors. So I gave them this model, or the blue ocean, or the other one, and I say it's equal. Take one of these 3 models. We are now on day 3 of the competition for business planning, and use it just for 1 hour. It's all 1 hour, and make the stress test of your idea. Can you tick for 5 or 6 points and say, yes, my idea fulfills these requirements, or use one of the other models? So that will happen in Berlin when we have our conference there this year. I like to be involved in the first week with the students, and when they have their business idea, maybe it's my task to use one of these models. So that was just a suggestion for the different universities here, and a lot of people engaged in business planning, and to do that with students. And so I just have decided to use that tool to give it to you. Maybe you can use it in your lessons, in your lectures. That is just a suggestion. Thank you very much for having me here.
Any questions before we leave? Thank you. So last but not least, we have Jite Kim, discussing his journey to being an entrepreneur, actually alum of the GW, who is currently in Korea with his company AgentNet. So tell us about his story. All yours. Let me get your slides up.
Thank you.
1 second. It's loading.
Okay, can I start? Hello, my name is Chite, and as Sky just mentioned, I went to GW many years ago, and I graduated from GW in 2013 from the undergrad program. And ever since then, pretty much right after college, I started my company, and I've been serving the company as the founder CEO over the past 10, 11 years. And today I'm going to talk about my startup journey from day one to IPO. We are doing the IPO right now. We're in the process right now. And it's been quite the journey from the very beginning to the point where we're doing the IPO. So yeah, I hope you can gain some new perspective on startups. Next page, please. Can you go to the next page? Yeah. So to give you the company overview, I'm the founder of IGNet, and IGNet is the company behind Korea's #1 insurtech platform called Bodak. And we are basically leading the digital transformation of the insurance industry. We are based in Seoul, and we have 7 other locations in Korea. And we've been backed by some of the most prominent venture investors, VCs, and other financial institutions such as Mira Asset, Intervest, SBI Investment, Hana Financial Group, Uri Bank, among many others. And over the past 10 years or so, we've been funded about $25 million worth of funding over the course of like 4 or 5 funding rounds. And yeah, the vision is to build a technology-driven, data-powered, customer-centered insurance service company in order to provide truly the 21st century insurance experience to customers. Can you go to the next page, please? Next page, please.
All right, 1 second.
Yeah. So to give you a better idea of what we exactly do, so Bodak is an app that allows you to access all of your financial information. So we are essentially a My Data company, which means that we have this license called My Data. And My Data is what allows us to access your financial information as far as your banking accounts, your insurance balances, things like that. So very difficult license to obtain because it's basically applying to become a financial institution in Korea. And there's only a handful of companies that have this My Data license. And we are very lucky to be one of the first companies to ever get this license in 2021. That's when the new law was passed. And I was actually one of the people that was sort of crazy enough to convince one of the members of the Congress in Korea to, to put the law together and to actually pass it. So we have My Data, and through My Data, we get to access your insurance portfolio, right? And once we do that, we have an AI engine that analyzes your portfolio and tells you basically this policy is good for you, and that policy doesn't really look good for you. So you might want to make some modifications here and there. And as a result of that, we also give you recommendations as to what new policies to buy into. And we typically give you 3 to 5 recommendations based on your overall financial circumstances. Next page. So with that, we're doing about the most important thing. One of the most important things that we track on the app is the number of quotes being generated on the app. So that's the amount of customers that we get. We're doing about 20,000 recommendations a month. This number is a little outdated, but so yeah, currently about 20,000 recommendations a month. And we're converting about 15% of them into paying customers. And currently, we're doing about $2 million, to $2.2 million in revenue per month. That's the amount of cash flow that we generate. And if you know insurance at all, if you translate into insurance terminology, that would be about $400 million in gross written premium this year alone. So we are considered the largest insurance distributor, digital distributor in Korea. And with that, we are looking into doing a successful IPO soon. So why did I start the company, right? I was basically, I started the company in 2014, right? Only about 6 months out of college. So it was a very difficult decision, but also at the same time, I felt like I really I had nothing to lose, right? So this was my thought process then, right? I saw that there was an important problem in the insurance market, and I thought I could solve it. My father at the time was involved in insurance brokerage business, where he was doing, he and his team, pretty large team at the time, but they were doing very traditional way of insurance brokerage business, where they were directly talking to customers in a very traditional way. And I just thought that business wasn't scalable. So the reason why that wasn't scalable is that younger people like me, don't really want to buy insurance through traditional agents and brokers by talking to them. We want to have a digitalized way to purchase insurance, and we are the ones that are going to have to buy all the insurance from that point on, right? So I thought maybe there was a way for me to create a platform that can attract users to really understand their insurance portfolio and maybe gain new perspectives on it and get recommended and buy new policies through us. So yeah, it was a very simple idea, and it wasn't a very well thought out plan at the time, because like I said, I was a very fresh out of college, and I was sort of blissfully ignorant of the fact that it was going to be very difficult. But at the time, I had very little idea how difficult it was going to be. So some of the opportunities that I found, that I saw at the time, were the problems in the market, in the insurance market. Like I said, my father was involved in the insurance business for a while. So I was sort of naturally exposed to the problems and the conditions of the market. And at the time, I found this study where it said 87% of the people in Korea the first thing that comes to their mind when they want to buy insurance is searching on their mobile devices. So a lot of people, there's a high demand, right? If they want to buy insurance, they want to search for insurance, they go on Naver or Google to search for what is right for them. But if you go to number 4, what ends up happening is about 98% of the people still buy through traditional agents and brokers. So I thought that, okay, there was a problem there. So there was a great demand. 87% of the people, vast majority of the people, want to buy through some sort of digitalized way, but most of them end up buying through very traditional methods. So I thought maybe you could come up with a platform and technology that can really meet the demands of the people and also provide value for the insurance industry. So we started collecting all the data points and all the documents that were necessary for developing such a platform. So one was terms and conditions document that was available at the time, and some of them were not publicly available. So we had to really delve into finding where they are and to put together into a data warehouse where if a new policy or if existing policy is coming to our engine, we know exactly what this entails. And we tell you, here are some of the things that you want to really know about this policy. So it took us about a year and a half to develop this data warehouse. And once we did that, that's when I thought we had a good shot. Can you go to the next page? But that's when all the troubles sort of started. So initially, if you know anything about venture funding cycle, this looks something like this. This is like pretty much straight out of textbook. At the initial stage, you get funding from the triple F, friends, family, fools, and they're the ones that typically invest in you, not necessarily because your idea is good or that they believe in your business model, but because they like you. They like you because they're your family members, they're your friends, or they're fools, right? So I was lucky enough to get the initial $20,000 or so from my family to start this company. And that's when I was doing all the data collection. And once we did that, we went to market, right? Because we were pretty much running out of money after about a year and a half. And we were out in the market. But that's when all the trouble started because it was very difficult to get a meeting with any sort of meaningful institutional investors at the time. So I think it took us about like 6 months just to get a meeting with like one of the VCs there in Korea. And but I was lucky enough to be part of this accelerating program called The Ventures, which is very similar to Y Combinator. If you know anything about Y Combinator in the Silicon Valley, it's a startup batch program where they bring in new companies every batch and they invest, they coach. So it was a very similar program that I was part of. And as a result of that, I raised about $600,000 in capital as a seed round. And we ran out of that money very quickly again. After about a year, within about a year, we were almost completely running out of the money. And I found myself going out to market again to raise more capital. And at that time, we still had very little traction. So it was very difficult to talk to investors. But somehow we were able to get the Series A funding, about $1 million in 2019. And from that point on, we were able to even pass the law. Me and some of the fintech founders in Korea, we were able to convince the Korean Congress to pass the bill to have this My Data law in place. So from that point on, from 2019 to 2020, from that point on, we were getting a lot of traction thanks to My Data, and we were growing pretty rapidly ever since. If you go to the next page. So this is what I think about this quite often. I think about this image quite often because you plan things ahead and we plan to have everything to be pretty straightforward to you. And especially if you have no experience in real life, like I was, you think that you're going to have a very straight path. But the reality is you're going to have a lot of valleys, right? If you go back to the previous slide, it only says that there's one value of that, right? It sort of looks like there's only one value of that, and once you overcome that, there's going to be a pretty straightforward pathway towards IPO. Can you go back to the next slide? But the reality looks like this, right? So you're going to have not just one, but many death valleys. And me personally, I think I've had at least 5 death valleys, meaning you have basically no capital and you're about to really fail as a company. But over the course of 10 years, I think I've experienced at least 5 really critical points where I personally maxed out my credit card just so that I can put money into the company and to keep it going. But eventually, you learn, right? You learn that the more you try, the luckier you get, and that if you are resilient enough, you're going to be able to see that. I guess the result that you were hoping for from day one. Can you go to the next page here? And this is one of the most important lessons that I learned from running a company. So this is not just me, but this is across many founders that I talk to in the tech world, and not just in Korea, but around the world. Along the way, someone will leave you, sue you, and betray you. And this is such a common thing. Like, I've never really met any founders in tech that are successful that haven't experienced all three. Currently, we have about 220 people that are working for the company, and we have a pretty high turnover rate being a tech company. And so somebody's going to leave you, and because we're basically in the business to compete with the bigger guys, the insurance companies and the more traditional insurance brokerage firms. Somebody's going to try to, fight you back by suing you and come up with some BS reason to sue you. And very often, somebody within the company can betray you. And I've experienced all three. But what I've also learned is that you just have to be resilient. This is something that I learned not just from my own experience, but also by talking to other founders. They were all resilient through the reality version of the venture cycle, through and through. And this is the only way to make sure that you have a winning chance. Next slide. It's one of my mantras. I do my personal venture investment as well. So I've invested into a few companies, tech companies in Korea. And this is something that I tell all the founders that are in the earlier stage of their development. Just don't die, right? It's always better to fight another day, to live to fight another day than to die, right? So this is something that this might be a little bit more personal than general, but I think that this is certainly how it feels. At first, you're going to have your survival stage, the survival phase, where everything you have to do has to do with survival of the company. So you are either raising capital or putting money into the company by maxing out your credit card. But once that phase sort of gets past, you have firefighting stage, where things are very chaotic around you, and you have to troubleshoot for all kinds of problems within the organization. And it's a very challenging time. And once you're past that, you have the existential threat phase, where you have other companies, bigger companies, better companies try to outcompete you, try to fight you by different means, outcapitalize you, all sorts of things. And what I want to tell you is that there's really no phase 4. I wish there is. I wish there is the paradise, right? But there's really no phase 4, and it all goes back to phase 1, where you find yourself in the survival mode again, and firefighting and the existential threat again. The reason is that if you're a growing company, you are constantly coming up with new features and new ideas and new technology that you're putting to test. So that's the reason why the same sort of cycle perpetuates. And through the process, like I said, you can't have to die, right? You have to survive and make sure that you're ensuring the future for the whole company. Next, please. So why do you do this, right? Why do I do this? It's a very difficult process and challenging experience, to say the least. But at least for me personally, the reason why I continue to do this is that this is how you can change the world and find your unique place in the universe. I believe that everybody has a purpose in their lives, and everybody is on their journey to find their purpose. And for me, it was entrepreneurship. And I thought by doing this and by pursuing this business idea, I could really change the world and find my unique place in the universe. So yeah, that's pretty much what I prepared for today. And thanks for having me. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Hello, everyone. That was an amazing presentation. I really appreciate it. GT is in South Korea right now, so the time zone is very, very hard on him. I know. I really appreciate you.
It's 3:48 a.m.
Yeah. So I really appreciate you staying up with us. Anyone have questions about his journey? Since he's spending his time with us online. I had one. I guess what were the lessons that you took away from studying in the States and also and the differences from studying in Korea and how you apply those to your business?
I haven't really studied in Korea before because I pretty much went through my K-12, not the whole thing, but from middle school, high school, and college all in the US. So I have very little experience. I can't really speak to that about the Korean educational experience. But I think um, it's very, from what I understand, like it's much more structured here in Korea. So it seems like the best way to, um, like the best thing to do after college, if you're going to a good school, the best thing to do is to get a job as like from one of those like chaebol companies, right? Samsung, Hyundai, LG, those companies, and that's sort of how you think you can ensure the future for your family. But I was sort of very uh, independent in my own way from very early on, and I thought, creating my own job instead of taking somebody else's is a much better way to ensure my own future. So I was sort of peculiar in my own way, where I was sort of like crazy or ignorant enough to think that when I was 23. I'm not sure my experience in the U.S. has any, input in that decision, um, but yeah, I think fewer people in Korea think that way because it's much more structured and much more conservative, if you will.
Anyone else? So, well, thank you so much, Ite. I want to let you rest, but I could give another hand of applause for this amazing presentation. So that concludes our sessions for this plenary 6, I believe. We'll have a short coffee break and go into our next session as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. this, but it wasn't working.
Up and down.
Let's see.
One by one. Two.
Not oil and gas, but there's some interesting projects that are floating wind, brand new. Carbon capture storage for Ulsan. So, ULSA. We're trying to do that in Gulf of Mexico, and we haven't been allowed to do it. But all these projects rely upon the same types of facilities that we do oil and gas, not nutrition. They were companies like that. They're being built for global. And Korea's partnering with Malaysia. Projects of global system. There's a lot to learn. I lived there. Yeah. But when I was there, everything was in the homes. Everything. We had hardly, we had maybe a couple thousand and, okay. But, now, nothing. Everything switched around. I was there in 1998. We were planning the office. I think they closed it down. Assuming the Korean government wanted them. Land sold it with real estate. Yeah, that's about sold. Nice. Spent a lot of time. Right. Hotel's still there? Yeah, that's true. Dragon Hill Walk. Hey, casino. My soul. Always get in trouble by spending too much money. And the army was very lavish. And overseas army bases, and those 18-year-olds. I don't have any. I was a lawyer.
Yeah, that sounds good. I need to share this. Hello, everyone. We're going to be starting soon. Plenary session 7. Korea future challenges and opportunities. So we have a great panel. Well, 3 different sessions, with some great speakers. Our first will be Korea's partnerships for Africa industrialization through knowledge sharing and entrepreneurship by Dr. Ji-Sung Lee. So I'll give the floor to Dr. Lee.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for inviting me this very special seminar. I have been enjoying myself last 2 days. Before I begin my presentation, because I think I have over half an hour, 30 minutes. Yes, I can easily spend 1 hour with this material. Anyway, so I will try to finish up within half an hour. Let me start with some introduction because yesterday and today I found that most of the presenters are talking about very micro scale, not macro. But what I am going to present to you today is macro scale. So the title I have been negotiating with Professor Ayman, and then I ended up with this one because I have been very much interested in and then working for Africa during the last 30 years, you believe it or not, because my first visit to Africa was in 1993 to Ethiopia to teach at Addis Ababa University. I presume that there is no Ethiopian here. Anyway, I spent 2 years there and then went back to UK and then stayed a couple of years and then returned home for good 1998. Since then, I was in the public sector and then taught at Goryeo University for 6 years and with the State University of New York, Korea for 7.5 years. And then I joined this Korea Aerospace University as an endowed chair professor only last year. So I haven't got much knowledge about the aviation management or anything, but I have been working a lot with other foreign universities and foreign countries in terms of enhancing partnership with the foreign countries and economies. Today's presentation is about how Korea can share our experience with the African countries, because we all know that we have a great mission to support Africa, because Africa has a population more than 1.4 billion people. And you believe it or not, nowadays, every year they are having 45 million newborn babies, 45 million. And then last time we talked on the Zoom, and I realized that there are more than 12 million or 15 million people who are trying to get a job after secondary school. So can you imagine that? There is no country on earth. Of course, there are 54, 55 countries in Africa who can create that many jobs. Even China cannot. Shall I share 1 minute? Because in China, every year they are having 13 million university graduates. Do you know how many of them are getting a job? Around 2 million. Rest of them, they are trying to find job. This is China, because we know the strength of Chinese economy is still very hard. But coming back to Africa, it's not easy. But from my belief, because I am an economist, and if you want to develop any country is the same. If you want to develop, you have to industrialize. Without industrial promotion, it will be very difficult to develop your own country or any country. And industrialization requires entrepreneurship, because last 2 days, many presenters talked about Korean entrepreneurs, which I'm going to tell you very briefly today. So just very briefly mention about our country and then how Korea developed in terms of industrialization. And then I want to show you what are the challenges for Africa, especially African industrialization. And then what are the possibilities of partnership for entrepreneurial development? I think I hope that you will agree with me how we can proceed it. So very briefly, because we have a more Korean audience than foreigners, so I don't have to go in detail. We have 51 million. The area is only less than maybe 1%, around the 1% of USA. USA has a huge size of land. Human Development Index from the UN, it shows that how well people are living. We are between 12 and 15s. Korean economy is very much oriented to export sector and trade sector, if I say. So we are number 6 trading country in the world. And the GDP size is not as big as USA. USA is more than 10 times of South Korea. South Korea, 1.7, $1.8 trillion, even smaller than the value of Apple or NVIDIA, about $2 trillion, I read a couple of days ago. Our economy is a very well structured in terms of a very small portion comes from agricultural sector and a large portion comes from industrial sector. I saw the report. USA has an industry share to the GDP around 20%. We are 39%, very strong. I could see many Hyundai cars, Kia cars, and then even Samsung. And then when I visited the Brookings, they were all using Samsung monitors. I don't notice what is the Samsung or not. Anyway, so it is a very export-driven manufacturing sector, very strong. Service sector, relatively lower than other developed countries. Growth rate slow down. And then we have a very strong shipbuilding industry, automobile, petrochemical, electronics, ICT, semiconductor, you can name it. Now I said that we want to share our experience with the other countries, sharing with others. With whom? African countries. And in the Korean constitution, we have a so-called 홍익인간. 홍 means very wide. It means some benefits or benevolent activities. And the 인간 means human beings. So we want to do something which will be good for the human beings. Shall we start with the industrialization, which started in 1960s. After a lot of political upheaval and after the Second World War and the Korean War lasted about 3 years, and then we had the political difficulties, and then we had the military coup 1961. Then there was a situation in Korea. So we have a shortage, we had a shortage of capital because it was a very poor country, and then very low level of technology, and then limited private sector activities. Since then, we worked very hard. Why? In the other side of the economy and the social environment, we had many, many people, because during that time, 31 million people. And then we have a very high level of education zeal. Every Korean mothers are helicopter mom. Have you heard of a helicopter mom? Yes, that's the situation even in 1960s. What happened? So we have a high level education and then motivation to develop our economy. So it was a very well motivated. So what happened? We started with the light industries, meaning that just producing textile product with a low capacity of technology level. And then also even wax, we exported to the USA a lot. And then we move on to heavy and chemical industries in the 1970s. And then those who have done economics, you may know William Rostow's non-communist manifesto. There are 5 different stages of development. Are you come across with that? So it started with this traditional society and the free conditions and the take-off. Take-off in Korea was in the 1970s when government spent billions and billions to develop heavy and the chemical industries. And it is not only that. Government rightly made a decision which kinds of industries we are going to develop. It was very good so-called industrial policy, like steel, iron and steel. Even we don't have iron ore, we don't have coal, but we still develop iron and steel. One of the best in the world nowadays. POSCO has the most efficient steel plant in the world. Automobile, when you have steel, you can do a lot like automobile, shipbuilding, petrochemical industry is even more surprising. Why? Because we don't have any single drop of oil. What happened? We invested a lot in 1970s for the petrochemical industry, and then we have one of the most efficient petrochemical plants in the world. Even, I don't know whether you know Delta buys Korean produced jet oil. So can you believe that we have a very big capacity for petrochemical? And then you can see so many things that comes from petrochemical industries. The result, another result, we know the Zebol or large conglomerates. So during that time, many Jables were created. Of course, they started a bit earlier, but they become very strong in terms of industrial capacity. Only a few years ago, 2021, Samsung shared 23% of Korean GDP, and Hyundai 12%. Even I always meet government officials how much Samsung Group shares our tax revenue. They say 19%, 19.7%, nearly 20% of Korean government budget comes from Samsung Group. Maybe there are some good point and bad point, because we talked about the small and medium-sized industries, but this is another story, which I can spend quite a bit later on. And the 1980s, even we were doing better. Why? We are very well equipped with the good technology industries in the 1970s, and then we were able to even further promote. Of course, there are some debates about imbalanced growth, because we have a small country, but separated region, Gyeongsang region, Jeolla region, and then Midland. And then one region, they were always saying that we are not well developed. But we had regional imbalance problems and the structural imbalance problems, because we were focusing on large conglomerates like Jabil. And the small and the medium enterprises were, we are not fairly treated from the government. So it is not US dollar, it's a percentage. 99.9% of all enterprises are small and medium enterprises. And then 85% employment are small and medium enterprises. And then we had some overcapacity. Why? Because government gave a lot of benefits to the so-called heavy and the chemical industries, and then many Jables were trying to invest. So we had overcapacity. But there are so many other stories. Later on, we had too big to fail theory, but it was not working because the day was collapsed. And then after Seoul Olympic Games in 1988, government brought the trade union movement much more freedom, because before that we had I can say that suppress the trade union movement. We are not allowed to form trade union, but now it is all free. And then also, when you have a very strong trade union, then like big companies, they try to find a place where they can produce cheaper. And China was a good target market for Korean investment. And the 1990s, we all know that 1989, former Soviet Union was collapsed, and then all became market-driven economy in the world. And then we had so-called policy globalization. Everything was global. So WTO became much more active, and then Korea is one of the most active country to have a free trade agreement, because I earlier said that it is a very open society. I don't know whether I am doing all right with the time. I am halfway through, okay? Yeah, and then also, so by then, because of 20 years of experience for technology progress and industrial promotion, we had a much more mature economy. And then how about the human resource development? Still very strong. And then at the same time, we had a political changes, much more democratic government we are having it. And then also at the same time, we are always trying to look forward, like IT, BT, NT, because we are not just heading at 5 or 10 years later. We want to see what will be our major industries in 10 years, 20 years time. That's why Korean ICT sector is very strong, because we have a long-term views. Why is that? Because we have been spending huge amount of money for R&D, research and development, one of the highest in the world. Only Korea and Israel has more than 4.5% of GNI for R&D. So that made it possible for us to progress science and technology. So I think that you will understand that. It is not only that, because of a very rapid promotion in ICT sector, we had a very good e-government system. Everything is all e-system. And then I can tell you so many experiences, what Korean government is. We can print out all the land certificate, everything at home. And then also e-government system brought very good governance, much more transparent. You can access any government minister's homepage, and then you can find it, what kinds of policies the government is pursuing. And also you can advocate. And then we have so many channels to do that. And also we know entrepreneurial development. I will tell you a little bit more later on. And then when you have a very strong relations between government and the enterprise, we call it crony capitalism. Many people wrote about crony capitalism. So during the last 50 over years or so, Korea did very well. And then without that kinds of collusion, big companies were growing, and the Kia Motors, Hyundai, Samsung, Bosco, LG, you can name it. And then I sometimes talk about the story in Vietnam. Why? Because Vietnam, we had a very bitter history, because Korean soldiers are fought in Vietnam with the American soldiers. Do you know what happened? When they brought Doi Moi policy in 1983, Koreans were rushing into Vietnam. Why? Because they are very diligent, and they are very well educated and trained and motivated. So I just want to give you one example. Samsung, they have 28 factories in 11 different provinces in Vietnam. And they share 10% of GDP of Vietnam and 20% of total export of Vietnam. That is only one Korean company is doing. And there are more than 9,000 Korean companies working in Vietnam. I talked this story in Uganda in front of Museveni, in front of the president and the top officials in Uganda last year, this time of last year. And then they asked me how we can ask Samsung to invest in Uganda. I said, you have to work very hard, because they need to have a good skill and so many things. Anyway, so you can see that so many things happened in Vietnam, and the Vietnamese economy is one of the fastest growing economy in the world. And they are doing very well. Sometimes I say extremely well, and then they say, don't say extremely well. Vietnamese are saying. Now, because we are talking about entrepreneurship, so I worked out what are the factors which affect Korea's entrepreneurship. I worked out with this. First of all, developmental state. If you have done economics, you know that how government can drive the economy, like Singapore, like Taiwan, Korea, and even Vietnam, even China. They all, we say, developmental economy. Developmental state means that government is driving the economy. And Korean culture, some people said already. And then I always emphasize education and training. So whenever I explain about education and training, when you are not having proper education, we call it just the human beings. But when they are educated and trained, we call it human capital. So you have to make human capital. And the partnership. cooperation, geographical location. I can spend a few minutes with that because we are neighboring Japan, and then also we have a very good partnership with the USA. And then foreign direct investment, I showed you the first diagram. We didn't have a capital money or technology. What should we do? We have to ask foreign companies to invest. That was a starting point. And then export-oriented industrialization. And because we have only 30 million population, not enough for large-scale industries, market-driven economy. So it is time for Korea to share our experience for prosperity. You know, Ambassador Ojun knows better than me. The main purpose of UN is peace and security and prosperity, isn't it? So we want to share our experience with others by bringing other countries who are not well developed, and they will have a better life. That's our duty. I mentioned about 홍익인간 in Korean Constitution. And then since 1991, we have been helping many countries. We are spending a small amount, $5.4 billion this year, but it is not that big compared to other countries. USA, I saw that $50 billion of USAID budget per year. We are only 1/10 of what USA pays. And then it is only, Korean ODA is only 0.15% of GNI. In the international or global scale, what we do is say how much the country is spending money for ODA against the GNI. And then, at the global level, all the European countries are trying to make it 0.7, but USA is 0.23 something, not much, but the scale is so huge. So USA is number one. Anyway, so we have so many things to do, but because I want to talk about Africa, and then I was looking at how much we are doing with Africa. Very minimal, only 1%, 0.7% of that foreign direct investment goes to Africa because there are so many issues. Now let me just briefly tell you about the challenges for Africa. Because it is not only I went there more than 30 years ago, because I have been traveling so many times. Even, you believe it or not, 2018, I visited Africa 9 times. Anyway, so they have a big vision. And nowadays, I found that because I have been following the Africa about the economic indicators. When you see the macroeconomic indicators, you always look at the economic growth rate, unemployment, inflation, balance of payment. Even USA, if the USA government is doing very well, then you are doing very well. Or these 4 categories, which you can see from a macroeconomic textbook. Industrialization, very low, because a very small portion of the output comes from industries. And then HLD, human resource development. When you talk about the human resource development, you always classify general education of the secondary and the Tibet, technological, vocational education and training, and the surgery education, university, very low. And the science and technology capacity, very low. Entrepreneurship, very limited. But African countries have big challenges. They have a good ambition. Agenda 2063 is just 100 years of anniversary for the African Union. But previously it was called OAU, Organization of African Unity. But far away to go. They just started African Continental Free Trade Area, 2022. And they need to transform, and digitalization, and good governance, self-reliance. And then I always argue that they should be heading to establish industries so that they can be the engine of world economy. So they will produce what Chinese are producing the whole world market. That's why China is called the workshop of the world. If I bring some history, many years ago, Britain, when they were having industrial revolution 200 years ago, they called it a workshop of the world. Anyway, so let me just spend 5 minutes. So another thing for challenges, Africa's industrialization and climate change, you can have a look at, there are so many uncertainties, international and the internal, even pandemic, so many things, and the inclusiveness. And then I believe that it is very necessary to have, even I analyzed with the SWOT, as many of you are doing business studies, you know better than me. So you can see that what are the weakness and the strengths, opportunities, and threat. And then what you need to do is how government can do that. Government has three important missions: national security, law and order, and public goods. And the good governance is very necessary. Africa needed to have their own development model. This is only one model which I can present. Agricultural development led industrialization. Why? Because they have a shortage of food. They import a lot of food stuff. And the export promotion. And they needed to transform the economy. How? They needed to promote science and technology. So in order to promote science and technology, you need to have a national R&D system, which Korea had. And then industry, university, research, government cooperation, very necessary. And you need to have a very good partner. And then private sector engagement, many presenters already said, so let me skip. And I also mentioned about patriotism. You need to be very, for Africans, very patriotic or have responsibilities or ownership. And then partnership with the others. Like Korea will be a very good partner. America can be a very good partner to Africans. This is a last slide, more or less, and the model. You know, if we want to improve the capacity of entrepreneurs, it is not possible only one academic sector like where we are. I believe that academia, business, government all work together in Korea, Africa, and the international institutions. Even I can put USA here. We work together and the good cooperation partnership, and it will bring enabling business environment. And then human resource development. And then all the stakeholders from the industrial sector, we work together. And these are the partnership processes which they start with the good policies and the determination. And you can have a look later on. And whenever you have a business, you need to have a sustainable entrepreneurship. If your business fails within 2-3 years, then there is no chance for any country to develop. What should you do? You have to sustain, and there are other processes. I think I exceeded the 3 more minutes, so if I just conclude that, Africa, even yesterday, one presenter talked about, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you have to go together. That is the one of the saying from Africa, which I heard it so many times. And what matters is who will be your partner. And it is very necessary to have a holistic approach, if I say, meaning that public sector, private sector, academia, all to get together. And then also we focus on human resource development. And then Africa's industrialization can be obtainable from entrepreneurial development, which Korea can share with them so that their economic progress, industrialization will be shortened. I hope that you were able to get some point. That's what I want to say today. And it's a very macro scale, not micro. And then I hope that there should be some starting point to have a macro views in any country or any industry. So thank you very much for your attention. I think if you have any question, please do.
Well, I want to thank you for that presentation. Please, we want to acknowledge you and give you an award. you know, the great thing about entrepreneurship, it's about the future, right? You can't be an entrepreneur if you're always looking backwards. And so, but at the same time, you have to know about the past. And I appreciate your presentation because you set the framework in terms of what happened with Korea as an example. We always talk about collaboration. And so I just want to thank you for sharing your ideas, but also to be a good entrepreneur, you have to be optimistic. The glass it must be half full, or you see it that way. And so your description in terms of partnership, you know, it's not enough to say there's a problem, but you've outlined steps, crucial steps in terms of what can be done. And so I just want to thank you for the presentation. And on behalf of the Global Korean Entrepreneurship Forum, I present you, Dr. Jin Sun Lee, with this award. Big round of applause. Thank you. You know, and thank you for those words of wisdom. Thanks. Okay, thank you. So it's, okay. Next speaker, we're going to look at the intersection of the three avenues: digital nomad, workstation, and the South Korean population conundrum by Dr. So. Please join me in a big round of applause for Dr. So. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Winslow. As Dr. Winslow introduced, my name is Dr. Jung Ho Seo. I'm a business professor at GW. I also serve as project director at KMI, so I'm one of the hosts. Thank you so much for joining us for these 2 days, and thank you for staying on a Friday afternoon. All right, I'll make more interactive, okay, and engaging, since I can see some of my current and former students in this audience, right? And also, I'd like to thank my team, Sky, Pedro, Justin, and Kyle, and ICSB board, Dr. Terabushi, for pulling like a triple duty. I've been struggling with minor health issue for the past few weeks. So logistically, my team, pulled this off, and we successfully reboost the Korean EF, which is the third GKEF this year. Thank you so much. And thank you for all the attendees from GW, outside GW, in the DC community coming from. Thank you so much for joining us today and for this 2-day forum. All right, today, as Dr. Winslow introduced, we will talk about 3 issues: management, industry, society. Like Dr. Lee explained, we will talk about a little broader macro level issue in this final in-person session of day 2, GKEF. So before we delve into these 2 issues, I'll briefly introduce I'm an assistant professor of management at GWSB. I also serve as a project director at GWKMI, and thanks for the ICSB board and Dr. Terabushi's colleague support. I started serving as managing director at one of the emerging entrepreneurship journal, GISP, JICSB, and I earned my PhD in management, business, sustainable management at Michigan State, and I did my co-terminal 4+1 co-terminal degree for both BS and MS at the College of Hotel and Tourism Management and at Kyung University, which is the birthplace and alma mater of so many beautiful minds, K-pop artists, K-actors, and including quite highly respected South Korean democratic politicians, democratic leaders, including 2
former presidents. I had to mention that because we are in Elliott School at GW. So no intention to make this talk divisive, right? So 3 issues that we will delve into together. 3 issues. So first of all, today's talk, my presentation will be based on my work featured in the CNN article, and it is published in 2024 this year, late February. And right after this article is released, I got a text message on a Thursday morning from Sky and Dr. Terabishi. Let's make it as let's make a presentation out of it in our third batch of the GKEF. So that's the inspiration, motivation, idea behind of this presentation. So take a look at the title of this article together. South Korea's digital nomad visa, which is the new visa policy. South Korea government, Minister of Justice, softly launched this policy, visa policy, at the beginning of 2024. And it's as you can see in the title, it's not just about the policy-making issue. It's more than that, much more than travel. It's not just about the travelers. Digital nomad, is quite self-explanatory term that you can get an idea of this policy. At the same time, we'll touch on the other issues related to the future of work, workation, and which be directly related to South Korea's demographic crisis cliff, that population conundrum. So we will talk about it. So first issue that I shared my insight when I talked to Lily Marcus of CNN, demographic cliff, that's one of them. And that's probably the causal factor of this policy based on my analysis. And workation is the phenomena, facts, what's happening in South Korea or across the countries. So we will talk about that issue, both causes and consequences of it too. And thirdly, the it can be a solution. The solution or panacea. Digital nomad visa policy could be a solution, question mark. So we will talk about it. I'd like to learn from your insights as well, because we are just stopping at analyzing the problems only. Maybe we would be the part of the problem too. So let's take further steps today. All right. So these are the 3 sections that I'd like to talk about in this presentation. Moving on. So in the workation parts, is the two of my areas of domains expertise are relevant to the workation issue. Work. I teach the required and core courses for the MSM HRM and Global Full-Time MBA class related to organizational behavior and human capital management. So workation and leisure. I also, as I told you earlier, my alma mater, Kyung University College of Hotel Management, Hotel and Tourism Management. We are quite well known for our travel, tourism, hospitality management, both in academia and in practice. So I was I'm a frequent commentator on the travel industry, airline industry, service industry for the past few months. So my work has been quoted by the Fox, ABC, NBC, and the local news channels, and Washington Post also featured my interview, and Condé Nast Traveler, the magazine, also reached out to me to talk about the issue related to Airbnb, some Airbnb safety issues. I also commented on the recent Boeing incidents, accidents, and organizational culture at Boeing. So that's one relevance with those topics that I'm going to talk about today, related to my background. And digital nomad will use that terminology when we discuss the panacea solution of this issue together. Okay, moving on. So what's the context? So in my class, I can see some of my current students in this audience. We always hone in on evidence-based management, evidence-based entrepreneurship. Thanks to Jim, discussed this terminology also at the Congress yesterday. Contextual factor, throwing in contextual factor whenever you are making a decision is the key practice number two that I use in my class almost every semester, and it's a 20. The researcher's name is Blaine, and Blaine and his co-authors, exemplified four key practices of evidence-based management, which is the kind of parent term of the evidence-based entrepreneurship. So contextual factors that matter. So what does that mean? Macro level factors or environmental factors related to the business leaders' decision-making process. So what's going on out there related to Korean businesses, Korean entrepreneurs, enterprises, and Korean society? Industry 4.0, that's the terminology, the concept we can take a little deeper dive into to understand what's going on out there. Okay, Dr. Klaus Schwab, who is the executive chair, founding chair of Davos Forum, World Economic Forum, coined this term a few years ago. Let's take a look at the definition together. Again, it's so crucial to have the same terminology, same language whenever we are talking about some buzzword like this, to have the same language to achieve the efficiency of communication. Also, it'll be much easier for us as a business owner, entrepreneur, to persuade, to communicate with your clients, customers, even the shareholders and investors. So take a look at the definition together, kind of lecture type of discussion. Industry 4.0 can be defined as the digital revolution that has been occurring since the middle of the last century, 20th century. It is characterized by a fusion, blurring the lines between the sectors, or blurring the boundaries between the sectors, industries, characterized by a fusion of technologies that is blurring the lines between the physical, digital, and biological spheres. Okay, so what are the elements of Industry 4.0 suggested by WEF, some other scholars in their follow research? AI, of course, is one of them. ChatGPT could be a great example. Robotics, I cannot see our friends from HMC, but Boston Dynamics is one of the subsidiaries of HMC these days. They launched quite new version of their robotics product recently. So they will check the clip. That's so fascinating. What are the other movements, elements of Industry 4.0? Industrialization and some other advanced technologies in the biohealth, biotech sector can be also the elements of Industry 4.0 and its movement. Let's turn back the time to have much clearer picture of this context, the discussion of context of what's going on outside the Korean society, Korean business, Korean industry, the Luddite movement. Let's turn back the time to the early 18th century in the UK. Textile workers, manual workers, they're not making the machine. They're trying to break the machine because the machines at the time started replacing their jobs, right? History repeats itself. Have you checked this clip or have you joined this OpenAI's Dev Day? Anyone? Show of hands. OpenAI's Dev Day. There are so fascinating takeaways from this OpenAI Dev Day event. So last fall or last winter, 2023, ChatGPT, the company behind ChatGPT, OpenAI, launched this event. So basically, the idea of this event is to create their version of App Store. Okay, so 3 key takeaways that I've learned from this event: no coding required, and you can build your own GPT. Number 3, you can upload customized knowledge on the store, and you can sell your chatbot. So for example, let me just apply this to my case. I can put all of my travel management, travel decision making, my related papers, my interview, media citations, all the other written records, my lecture slides, and I can put it on the GPT store or GPT's their ecosystem, and they can create Dr. Su's trip planning GPT, something like that. I have very minimal knowledge of coding skills, coding knowledge, coding languages. So that's what's going on out there outside our Korean society. Let me throw in one more example related to OpenAI. So if you click on this clip, the news report from CNN, Sam Altman, the current CEO of OpenAI, again, the company behind ChatGPT, last year, around the time when they launched this event, he was forced to resign by their board. Okay, I'm not going to get into any details of that story, but he came back right away with the new board of directors. So it's a quite ironical situation. The most advanced tech companies, AI companies in the world, had a people problem, had a governance problem. So it's how complex the market environment out there, outside Korean society, outside Korean entrepreneurs, market environment. And there was a build up. Let's delve into narrow it down to Korean issues. So a few days ago, April 21st, I believe, Financial Times published this article. Is South Korea's economic miracle over? With some bizarre illustration here, and you can see two figures on the right. Let me just highlight those two figures. Whenever I interpret, analyze figures charts in my class, I ask my students to check the labels. What does x-axis or the y-axis mean? We talk about it all the time. I'll just give you a gist of it. First one, growth has slowed. Growth has slowed. Okay, we had a brief talk about GDP, the meaning of GDP, which one would be more meaningful, adjusted one or the regular one. But let's just take a look at the trend here. So as you can see, right after the pandemic was over, right when the world just got into the post-pandemic era, South Korea showed quite interesting uptick. Since then, you can clearly see the prediction is quite negative. Okay, what about the working age population? South Korea obviously is already in the hyper-aged society. Okay, considering this chart, the red bars mean the people over 65 years old. So that's what's going on. Okay, what does that mean? What's in it for us? Okay, in this audience. So I broke down the topic into three sections using the same concepts, terminologies that I introduced you to earlier. Demographic cliff from my CNN article. Demographic is the problem. That's the problem statement. And what are the relevant causal factors or outcomes, consequences? Lowest birth rate in the world. As we talked about quite multiple times in this 2 days forum, today and yesterday, and it affects the labor market demands and prediction of the supply for the vacant positions and plus and beyond, right? So it will be directly impacting the labor market, and South Korea is observing in real time, especially in higher education related to this issue, right? And number two, phenomena, facts, figures based on the problem, as we analyzed earlier, mainly caused by the demographic crisis. Okay, workation, work and vacation, two words are combined in this kind of made-up word. So leisure and work, how to keep the balance between your life and work. These are the kind of trending words, topic for many younger generation. Okay, Gen Zs and millennials, even Gen Alphas, right? In the near future, work, travel, living. How can we keep the balance? Okay, how can we predict all these three aspects of our lives, right? Living, work, and travel. And number three, digital nomad. I'm not just talking about those the group of people, the group of nomads is the name of the policy, name of the South Korean Ministry of Justice policy, digital nomad visa. Okay, and is it a panacea? Is that a solution to solve this quite serious, significant problem for Korean society, Korean industry, and business? So, is that a strategic move by South Korean government, Ministry of Justice, to attract more global workforce, diverse global workforce? South Korea has been quite historically homogeneous society. So is there a chance that we can achieve a higher level of social mix out of it? So that's the idea of these three sections. And the first one, let's take a little deeper dive into the first part, the problem part, the demographic cliff. Two articles, one from the New York Times, the other from WSJ, which is, so I'm trying to keep the balance, okay, to work across the aisle. One company is backed by News Corp, right? So to balance the view. So fertility rate, birth rate in South Korea marked at 0.78. Which is the lowest in the world, not lowest in the developed countries, lowest in the world, worldwide. This report is written by OECD, and the data came from 2022, and the report was released 2023. And these two articles, let's take a look at the titles of these two articles. First one on the left is South Korea disappearing. I know dystopian scenario, but we will talk about the solution today, okay? So, and number two, world's lowest birth rate sinks further despite cash payouts to parents, okay? So another policy didn't work out quite well. So workation phenomena, let's talk about the facts and figures related to this problem. First, work, all these keywords, trends, business trends are relevant to South Korean society and entrepreneurs too. First keyword related to the workation phenomena, work plus vacation. The great resignation, quiet quitting, and quiet hiring across the countries. These are the buzzwords, trending keywords in business. The great resignation, I will not give you all the details of each concept. The great resignation, baby boomers, Gen X's, during the pandemic especially, they didn't want to be in a hybrid situation, hybrid work setting. That's one aspect of it. And the stock price, housing price, they're marked really high and skyrocketed. So they had enough asset to retire early or retire during the time. So great resignation. These are the main aspects of the great resignation phenomena. And quiet quitting because of many flexible working situation, hybrid work mode. Employees, workers could take advantage of the situation. And while they are working in a remote setting, they do something else, doing their meditation or long walk during the regular work hours, things like that. Quiet hiring. Right after pandemic was over, now the employers are in the driving seat, so it's quite in an opposite situation. The quiet hiring, in contrast to the quiet quitting trend. So number two, leisure work-life balance is quite in the center of the mindset for Gen Z and millennial workers, and shifting perspectives towards work. Work cannot be defined myself. That's another type of mindset for those young workers. And that's why workation, that made a word, is kind of trending these days. Number three, let's focus on South Korean situation. So South Korea has been historically homogeneous and a bit patriarchal society, and social mix is quite social mix is quite needed to make our South Korean communities much better.
right? So that's the idea behind it. And two figures, facts related to one, the first one, living hiking living prices in South Korea, especially in Seoul or the suburban areas of Seoul, and household debts. As Dr. Ambassador Ojun mentioned, the competition starts right after the birth. So all those fancy strollers like a Stoke stroller for moms, that company is purchased by South Korean company recently. It started their business, Stoke stroller started their business in one of the Nordic countries, right? And now it's acquired by South Korean company. Mira said, I think it purchased it. So that's what's going on, like insanely high standards of parenting, all those pressure, social pressure. So that's what's going on related to South Koreans living. Moving on to the last part of our discussion, Panacea, how can we solve this issue? We just talked about the problem, and phenomena. Now we are moving on to the solution. I usually take these 3 steps in my class or also in my research whenever I draw the conclusion for the managers and practitioners as part of my managerial practical implication part. And I also encourage my students to follow these 3 steps, this framework, whenever they are writing some technical reports as a consultant. I directly quote these 3 steps from Dr. Hajun Zhang, who is a former Cambridge economics professor, from his publication. So first step, at an individual level, we need to talk about changes in perspectives from your empirical findings. Your hypothesis testing should be relevant to this step number 1, right? Step number 2, moving on to a little bigger level, higher level discussion, or at an organization level, changes in practices. I'll just give you one example in the context of management or organizational behavior. So if your company's current DEI policy is too outdated and not promoting diversity within your top management or your board, then you can, as a business leader or decision maker of your organization, you can revamp that policy. So that can be one. The policy development at a company can be one example that we can think of. Institutional change is a societal, much larger, higher level agenda. So that passing the law, by working with the lobbyists or politicians, policymakers, passing the law, we are just changing the game of the rule, right? So by doing that, and South Korean government, especially Ministry of Justice, focus on step number 3 by softly launching the visual nomad workation visa. So I just put the official press release by the Ministry of Justice of South Korea and Joseon and Yonhap's quote of my work, my CNN article over here. So can it be the solution to solve all those problems that we discussed? Okay, I'd like to hear from you as well, and probably we can also think of the possibility to achieve the social mix, to raise the level of diversity of South Korean society, or including the workforce, by attracting the global workforce. So let's get back to the framework. Changes in perspectives, changes in practices. So I don't want you to stop at analyzing, criticizing the problems only. Okay, academicians are quite good at those areas. But let's take a further step. What are the next steps? So to get an idea, to generate idea by following these 3 steps, I'd like you to refer to this model suggested by Apple and Steve Jobs. So anyone, do you remember this event? 2011, iPad 2 launching event, Steve Jobs showcased, exhibited this model, the intersection model. So whenever Apple's product team, they're generating new idea for the products, they're at the intersection. They position themselves at this intersection between technology and liberal arts. So how can we apply this while following these 3 steps? Okay, and Tim Cook paid homage to the same model in 2019 in Apple's education outreach event in the Chicago metropolitan area. And here's my interpretation. I'm not giving the actual solution, but my interpretation, keeping up with the technology as one of the most advanced tech companies in the world, keeping up with the trends, keeping up with the current events, buzzword, as a business leader or as an entrepreneur, as an academician, we can do that by adopting this model, intersection model. The other way, liberal arts, what are disciplines of the liberal arts? History, sociology, literature. Those disciplines provide us with a robust and proven and tested theoretical, academic, or conceptual frameworks to make us as a sustainable business leader and decision maker. So evergreen entrepreneurship management themes and theories, classic HBS, classic case studies, published by HBS or some other, prestigious business schools, robust theories and conceptual frameworks are these are my interpretation of the other direction of this intersection model. So how can we do that to solve this problem? So that's my suggestion. I'm not giving out any examples of the solution, but if you want to talk more about it, feel free to reach out to me. Here's my contact, and thank you so much for your listening. Thank you.
Here. Well, thank you for those words, and it's a fascinating subject. We probably have time for one question. Is there one question that is on the top of mind? Okay, I see a question. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Leah. I went to GW years ago. I work in media and education. I'm wondering, certain sectors, so I work in film as well. There are a lot of like high profile actors that kind of talk about how they travel and they're only able to really work on their project and not really take vacation. I'm wondering for personal well-being, if it is healthy to have this work and vacation at the same time, or does it vary across industries? For example, would it be different in tech as opposed to law, for example, combining the two? Because sometimes it's just better to, sometimes it's hard to separate, sometimes it's hard to combine the two, because when I go to work somewhere, my mind is set on work and not set so much on vacation.
Thank you, Leah. This specific policy launched by South Korean government, they're specifically targeting at the office workers. Okay, they didn't label it, but they're not focusing on the traditionally nomad workforce like the actors. So, right.
So regarding the workation trend, we call the laptop class. There's a new class after COVID, the class that they only need a laptop to work, the laptop class. So that's mainly for laptop class. But that not just from the visa perspective, suburban areas, Korea is very centralized into the big city. So small cities, suburban areas, is an opportunity for them to attract nice nature, very nice K-food, and low cost living cost, and enjoy we can with nature. So that kind of some cities like a Gangwon province or some area, they're smart enough to use for attracting urban city laptop class people to spend some time in their suburban area. So the vocation, there's a positive and negative side, and it's important that to make it positive. Yeah.
Boosting local economy via tourism, that is one of the expected outcomes when the South Korean government launched this.
Well, thank you for that presentation. You know, I was remiss that I didn't have us ask questions to Dr. Jin Sun Lee, because this ties in to some extent to your presentation. As I understand, Korea is the only country, I believe, in last 30-something years that has moved from, you know, from an emerging country to basically to a high income country. I mean, as we're told from OECD, right? I mean, it has really gone through. And what we're talking about, these challenges, you know, low birth rate and workation, these are some of the benefits or some of the challenges of high income countries. Because you look at some of the emerging countries, they're so focused on, you know, some of the poor countries, they don't have the infrastructure. They don't have some of these challenges. They have a high birth rate and they have different challenges. They don't have the laptops, but Korea is a high income country, very developed, and so these are some of the things that unfortunately comes with wealth as well. And so, but it's a fascinating subject and something that we have to address. But on behalf of the 2024 Global Korean Entrepreneurship Forum, I present you Dr. John Hoso with this keynote speaker award. And let's take a picture. Well, thank you. It's great topic. And next speaker on the subject of entrepreneurship and the future of global energy, Eric Melito, who spent some time in Korea. I'm quite sure that you'll share some of your background.
Does this work?
Yeah.
You fixed it. Let me see if it works. Oh, yeah. All right. Thank you, Dr. Lee and Dr. Sue. And Dr. Sue nailed it. I'm going to try to get you back on time, but it's 10 after 4 on a Friday afternoon, and it's 65 and sunny, and I thank you for sticking around. My name is Eric Melito. I'm president of the National Ocean Industries Association, and I also teach a class here on entrepreneurship. Thank you, Dr. Terabishi, for having me and letting me teach at this wonderful institution. But I have a confession to make. I did go to Korea. I didn't want to go, and here's why. I was 26. I was single. I was living in Waikiki Beach, Hawaii. And it was my dream to live in Hawaii. So I was in the Army, stationed in Hawaii, living on a beach, drinking Mai Tais, and I had a surfboard. I couldn't surf. I fell off all the time, but I had a surfboard. And my boss called me and said, "You've been here 2 years. We're reassigning you to Korea." I said, "Please, no. I'm in Korea. I want to stay in, I'm in Hawaii. This is my dream. I'm living my dream." But one of the reasons I went into the U.S. Army, I was a lawyer in the Army, was because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And the Army, they tell you what you're going to do. So they told me I was going to Korea. I followed the orders. I went, and it was one of the best years of my life ever. I got to travel all around the peninsula. I was a defense attorney there, so I was defending those who defend. I was there to, and when I was in Hawaii, I was a prosecutor trying to discipline the soldiers that were the problem soldiers. But when I was in Korea, I was defending, which is also something I didn't want to do, but I ended up having a very valuable experience in representing soldiers who were being accused of things or were having disciplinary action taken against them. But the good thing about that job, I was a Pyeongtaek. When I was there, Yongsan was the big base, and everybody wanted to be in Yongsan. And Pyeongtaek was supposedly the one that was going to shrink down and close, but it was a reverse. Yongsan, great real estate in Seoul, that one ended up closing down, and Pyeongtaek is the big one. But I got to travel around a lot, both with work and with just on my recreational time, and I had a wonderful time. And the thing I liked the most about my time in Korea was the people. It was just treated so wonderfully. So I'm going to go through this. National Ocean Industries Association, we represent offshore energy. So my focus is going to be on offshore energy. If you have questions about some broader energy issues, we can hit them. And the reason why I think this is relevant is because and with offshore oil and gas, wind, carbon capture and storage, ocean minerals, hydrogen, those are the types of things that we do. And the reason why it's so important with Korea is Korea is a country, and Korean companies are companies that we rely upon to produce energy in our offshore region right now. At the same time, on a global scale, Korean companies and the Korean government are playing a leadership role, and they're kind of at the cutting edge of some of these emerging projects. So there were some good comments about the past, and entrepreneurship is also about the future. So we have an energy system globally that's kind of built on the past, but the Korean companies are taking a leadership role. I advocate to try to do the types of things that are happening now in Korea here in the U.S. My focus is on the U.S. And just I'll do the teacher thing. What are some of the major factors impacting the global energy system? What things do you think about? Anybody? We were hearing about population. Dr. Lee was talking about population in Africa. So what's the global population now? 8 billion. It's going to increase by 2050 to 10 billion. Going to need more energy, right? And one of these slides I'm going to come up to, it's really going to hit upon one of the big issues. What else? How about geopolitics? What's happening in Russia? What happens with Iran? What happens with Libya, Venezuela? There's growing understanding and recognition that we need to have energy security by making sure that we're able to get it from stable countries from around the world. And then another big one is what? Climate change. The class I teach, we talk a lot about climate change and the need to make sure that, okay, we are fueling the global economy. We are making sure that we are lifting up society with energy, because energy underpins everything. But we also have to make sure we're doing it in a way that continues to decarbonize. So this chart just shows you that, this is a little bit old, but the expectation was renewables globally would surpass coal in 2032. That's happened here in the US already. This year, renewable energy surpassed energy from coal this year. Probably will take a little longer on the global scale, but by 2050, renewables are expected to be the largest energy source for world energy. But it also shows that oil will likely continue to rise. I'm throwing this up there. Arjun Murthy, if you're interested in energy, he works for a company now, Veriton. He worked on Wall Street for a long time. He knows a lot about energy. He has a podcast and a weekly newsletter on Substack called Super Spike. He talks about the 1.4 billion club, and that's India, China, Africa, and countries in Asia, kind of outside of Japan, South Korea, and Australia, countries that want to have energy like the developing world, countries that want to get out of poverty and have high standards of living. So these are the points. Energy will need to be available. These countries want it to be available 24/7 every day of the year. They want it to be affordable and reliable. They want it to be domestically sourced if possible. Energy security. We talked about what's happening in Russia, what happens in Iran. You want to be able to get it from a stable place, and what more stable place than your own country? But clean air, clean water, biodiversity, carbon emissions are big factors. When we look at all these factors, we got to look at them together, and we need to do it globally. And that's kind of the conversation today, is that US, Korea, global partners, we need to do all this because it's a global energy system. World consumes 100 million barrels a day. That was a record last year. This year, it's going to be 102. Next year, 104. At some point, we'll peak and go down, and I have a chart on that. But people don't recognize that oil production, 30% of it comes from offshore. That's a large amount. These are very expensive projects, multi-billion-dollar projects, and they're attractive for investment because they're highly efficient. You get a lot of energy, and we're learning more and more that they have low carbon intensity. So these are the leading producers of oil throughout the world. This US is now up to 13 million barrels, and Russia's probably a little bit lower than that. But I point this out because here in the US, where I work, the US offshore, if it was its own country, would be the 11th leading producer in the world if it was its own country. But the energy that our global economy relies upon comes from places all throughout the world, but a lot from the offshore region. Offshore, multi-billion-dollar projects. It's a high-tech revolution. We hear a lot about artificial intelligence. That's being used more and more. We're doing a lot more with underwater robotics, so we don't have to send vessels out all the time. But it's just a big system of companies. Hundreds of companies are involved in one of these projects. A lot of work on a subsea. But when it comes to Korea, these are two projects coming online this year. The left is, I think, Hyundai Heavy Industries, and the right is Daewoo. These are the most advanced production facilities in the world. They're the first of their kind, and they're going to have what is going to turn out to be some of the lowest carbon emissions. And I'm getting to the point as to why that's important. So if you look at the projections, the future oil demand is going to depend upon the steps that are taken to address climate change. The stronger the action, the less oil the global economy is going to need. The weaker the action, the more things will stay the same. But if you have these scenarios where you're really aggressively trying to address climate change, you could get down to a world economy where you're using 60 million, 40 million barrels of oil a day as the global economy, bless you. But the importance behind that is there's still a lot of energy that's, bless you, that's still going to be needed by the global economy. So this is an interesting, we did a study on this. So you have all these companies, multinationals, a lot of them are doing work in Korea. Total Energies, the French, Repsol, the Spanish, Equinor, the Norwegians, Chevron, Shell, Shell's the Dutch, the BP. But all these companies, they are experts, and they've spent decades, if not more than 100 years, making money in oil and gas. So they're looking to invest in renewable and new technologies. But the way they're going to need to do that is by continuing to invest and make money in oil and gas. Their profit comes in oil and gas, and they're investing that in renewable technologies. Now, they're making a decision as to where to invest in oil and natural gas, and they're doing that based on carbon intensity. So offshore oil and gas production is proven to be the lowest emissions production because it's at such a scale. You have less opportunities for leakage. You're able to manage it. And you know, one example we give in the U.S. deep water, where you have a facility like this, 18 of these facilities are producing more than 1 million barrels of oil a day, the same amount as one of our leading states. And that's 9 city blocks physically. You can do a lot with a little, which means that your high volumes lead to really a low concentration of carbon emissions. So these big companies that are operating globally, they're moving toward deep water projects, which means they're relying upon Korean technology to get out there and produce that energy. So when they're taking that money and investing in renewables, as we see here, renewables are generally power generation, electricity. And you can see here in the US, we're going to see renewable energy for power generation double by 2050. And there's going to be a significant rise globally as well. We heard about the Inflation Reduction Act, $370 billion, primarily for renewable energy investment here in the US. There was another bill in 2021, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, hundreds of billions of dollars for the same types of investments. Lots of money is going into that here in the US. In one area, these are the maps. You could see offshore US along the East Coast, the right, the Atlantic. Those purple shaded areas mean there's strong winds. So there's a lot of investment going into offshore wind there. And what that takes is the turbines that you can see. A lot of those are manufactured in Europe. You see the substations to take the power back to shore. But most of this is going to be through a fixed structure that you put on the seafloor. So if you look at the Atlantic, on the right side where all this is happening, it's shallow water. They're able to install a fixed turbine on the seafloor, which is cost effective. That's how it's being done around the world. It's not something that's really that complicated because it's been done before. But what happens when you get to the US West Coast? What happens when you get out in further waters? You can't put it on with a fixed monopile jacket into the seafloor because the water's too deep. So these types of turbines, which have been traditionally used, are not something that you can use. Floating wind. This is a new technology, entrepreneurship, innovation, and one of the first places where this is happening is, of course, Korea. We want to do this here in the US, Maine, in the Northeast Atlantic, California, but what we're going to end up finding is that we're going to learn from Korea in the project that they have. This is an area that was traditionally a natural gas field, and I'm going to show a map in a little bit right here, Ulsan, and it's if you look at the F, I'm pointing to this one where nobody could see, but the F, Ulsan, this is about 60 miles out, and this is a former natural gas field where it's depleted, but they're using that as now an energy hub. What we would like to do in the US is take this, I apologize for not doing it up here, but we would like to take this Gulf of Mexico area where all of our oil is produced and turn that into an energy hub with wind and carbon sequestration and hydrogen, all these technologies, but we're behind. We're behind because what we're seeing is that other places in the world are moving ahead at a faster pace. So we're going to end up learning a lot from what is happening in Korea in this Ulsan region. But it's an area where it was natural gas. It's turning into an area where it's going to be wind as well as carbon sequestration and hydrogen and everything else. I'm just showing you this so that you understand how these energy systems work together. These are two vessels that for decades have done work in oil and gas. Now they're doing work in offshore wind. They're on the Atlantic coast working on an offshore wind project. So all this works together. The expertise that Korea has in oil and gas is now being transitioned to renewable and other technologies. Carbon capture and storage, this is recognized as one of the most important technologies when it comes to decarbonization. So you're going to look at an industrial facility, power plant, a cement plant, a steel plant. They emit a lot of carbon dioxide. You're going to capture it. You're going to transport it by pipeline or vessel, and then you're going to put it underground into the geologic formation so that it's not in the atmosphere and you don't have the global warming impacts. It's happening all around the world. What it takes is geology. And what we find, you can do it onshore or offshore, but when you go offshore, it has a lot of benefits. And one of those is being you avoid NIMBY, not under my backyard. A lot of times they say NIMBY, not in my backyard. But you don't have the issues related to these types of projects being around communities. It's far out. You have one entity that owns that area. You don't have lots of different people and jurisdictions fighting over who has the rights to it. It's usually the government. You're close to emission sources where you can capture the CO2 and then easily transport them. You have the ability to use vessels, not just pipelines. There's a lot of benefits of being able to do this. And this is an area where it's happening around the world, mostly in Europe and the North Sea, but Korea is now in the lead on this. It's that, I think it's the Donghae project in that Ulsan region where they're constructing a facility similar to the oil and gas facilities in order to be able to take the carbon dioxide and then inject it underground. They're working with the Malaysians to transport CO2 from Korean industrial facilities to get it out of the atmosphere and to the Malaysian outer continental shelf for injection. And they have numerous initiatives in place. We're behind. So it's going to take collaboration and learning from Korea to make sure that we're doing it the best way we can, because our wind sector, we're learning to do that because of what happened over the past 20 years in Europe. Carbon capture and storage, we're going to learn from Europe and we're going to learn from Korea, But what we're finding is that Korea and the Korean companies have advanced these facilities. They have the shipbuilding, the engineering expertise that is required really now, not just for oil and gas, but for all these projects. The big wind project in that area, it's the same company that designs and builds a lot of the oil and gas facilities. They're building the 33 floating wind turbines that are going to be put in that Ulsan area offshore. So everything's being integrated. But what I wanted to just highlight is how we have this evolving energy system, and for us to really make it work well into the future, addressing the need for clean, affordable, abundant energy, it's going to take collaboration and work across borders, particularly US and Korea. So anyway, I went quick, I talked fast, I apologize, but I was trying to get us back on schedule. So thank you. I'm welcome to take questions.
Well, thank you, Eric. And there's a lot in that presentation. And you know, what came to mind in terms of when we talk about AI, we have to talk about power, right? When you talk about these GPUs, when you talk about everything else, you know, there's in engineering, it says that power is proportional to frequency squared. So when things go up in frequency, like 5G, power goes up squared, right? So you need more power. And so where will we get this power from? Solar, wind, you know, whole bunch of things, but we're going to need more power. We have time for one question. If you have a question that, you know, well, I'll ask you too.
Small modular reactors. Yeah, I personally, I think nuclear is a big part of the answer moving forward, because you can do a lot with a little. You can power massive amounts of the population, and you don't have greenhouse gas emissions. You really can solve it. And while there have been incidents throughout history, every type of energy source is going to have risks that you're going to have to manage. And I think globally, there's been a lot of lessons learned, and engineers in these types of industries are very good at finding solutions and creating barriers to prevent the next incident from occurring. But I don't represent nuclear. At some point, they might be using nuclear modular reactors in an offshore setting, but right now, that's not part of my portfolio. But I think it really should be a big part of the solution.
Yeah, fascinating presentation. Thank you. My name is Fennu, and I'm an alumni from the economics department of the GW. I got my PhD here. I wanted to link the presentation on Africa and also on yours on energy, because, for example, in my country, I'm from Madagascar, the energy access is still at 15% of the population, and it's increasing to 20% maybe. And I see all the innovation that's out there, which is really great. Are you, and this is all about how the US is moving from the oil, the fossil fuel into the green transition. But I mean, if do you look at all into Africa in your work or not?
Well, yes, we track what's happening globally, and Africa, of course, has a lot of resources, a lot of resource capability, and a lot of it comes down to the dynamics of what the leadership of the country wants to do and how it wants to manage those. A quick data point: the average American uses 22 barrels of oil per year. The average Korean uses 18 barrels of oil per year. The average person in China uses 3. India 1. You get into Africa, a lot of it's 0, or it's less than, it's a few gallons, or it's an area that really is going to be pushing to get to a higher economic standard. But to do that, it's going to take energy, and it's going to take, I think, some of the traditional energy sources we have until there's a solution to do it in a different way. But it's a tough question. I don't think enough attention is paid on the needs of the African continent. I think the international community is concerned about, you know, the emissions effects, when I think the people in Africa want energy above all, and they know that there's going to be emissions. But to do that, it may take natural gas, it might take oil. it's going to be hard to do it with just solar and wind. And I think that complicates it.
I think just to complement on my question, it's more of the critical. Oh, to complement on my question, it's really because Africa is source of critical minerals that are really important for the energy transition. So I think like the way the West is or developed countries are moving into that, but also Africa being behind on the access to energy. So yeah, that's just if you could have the picture of where is it coming from for the developed countries to have those minerals that's necessary to get the battery, to get whatever.
No, that's a fantastic point, because electrification and electric vehicles is going to take cobalt and lithium and manganese and copper and graphite, and a lot of that is in Africa. And hopefully there will be collaborative efforts among nations to make sure that those minerals, those critical minerals, are being transferred to countries that want them. But at the same time, those African countries are getting the assistance from Korea, from the US, from others, to make sure that their standards of living are being raised by the provision of energy. I agree.
That's a great question, but also that speaks to human development, human capital, right? That the minerals are being developed by those who understand the science and technology, right? So that's why you need to have higher education, being able to make use of the technology or those that are in the ground around you. Because if not, then they're just minerals, right? It's how do you understand the physics, the science, the chemistry, the technology to also make products as well. And so that's part of development, and that ties into what we were talking about. I just want, please give a big round of applause to Eric Lito again. This has been great, I'm going to hand the microphone over to my colleagues here, and please come and you'll share.
So it's on yours, right?